Okay. Hi everyone, this is SmithyQ, SmithyQ.com, and I'm back here with another video analysis. Before I get into that, I just want to extend my offer once more. This is recorded February 2018, and until March of 2018. If you want me to analyze one of your games in one of my videos, if you were to send it to me, whether it's in the comments or on my blog, SmithyQ.com, or you message me on chess.com, if you send me a game, I will analyze it for you. And that offer is good until March. Excuse me. Because I don't have enough time in the day, during the week, to actually play chess currently. But I still like making videos. I like analyzing. So if you send me a game, I'll do it. Speaking of which, if we look at today's game actually is one of my old games. And this game has some real historic value to it. This is the game that got me to play chess again. For those who don't know, I quit chess for many years. I couldn't do it anymore. And then I played a couple games randomly here and there. And then it was this game, played online, in which it really rekindled my fire. It was like, wow, chess is fun again. Chess can be great. And then I started studying, then I got better. I broke my old 1800 rating barrier, then I got over 2000. And I actually broke 2100 on chess.com not too long ago before falling back down, but that's okay. And I've improved mightily. I created a blog. I create these videos. And so, long story short, without this game, well, I guess I wouldn't be here. And you wouldn't be here watching. But more than that, this game really illustrates my thought process, or it really shows how I approach chess. I think it does it wonderfully, and it's a pretty cool game. It's pretty fast, and I think there's something to be learned from it. So let's take a look. I was white. Again, I was 1800-ish, I suppose. It's hard to say. I was very rusty at the time because I hadn't played for many years. Anyway, the opening was e4 and then knight f6. So this is the Alekhines defense. Now, I'll be honest, I don't know the theory to this position very well, and I didn't know it back at the time, but I do know the ideas. And the general idea is, of course, black wants to lure white's pawns forward and then attack them. And black is really looking for a position like this, in which white will play c4, and then d4, and then, sure, f4, why not, and we reach this position. Note that it's black to move, and he can play knight c6, or he can play c5. He can play anything right now. And notice how black will have lead in development. Let's say he does play knight c6, or he's attacking the pawn. He would have two pieces developed, his queen's an open file, and white only has pawns. Now, these pawns, they might be very strong. They could menace black, and if black isn't careful, he could be crushed. So these pawns might be a strength. At the same time, they can be counterattacked. This pawn in particular is weak. If this pawn gets exchanged, then this pawn's weak. And right now, only white has only pawns developed, so to speak. And so this could be a very dangerous position for white. It could also be a dangerous position for black. And if I don't know the theory, and more to the point, why should I give black what he wants? The reason you play the Alekhines defense is to get this extended pawns and to attack them. That's the whole idea. That's the basis of the opening. And so, I don't allow that. I play e5, then I just play d4. He attacks my pawns, I just develop. So my focus isn't on trying to refute my opponent. I'm not trying to chase his knight all around. I'm just going to develop normally. He pins, I develop. He plays e6, he can do whatever. I castle. Alright? I try and kick his bishop away, hope maybe he'll exchange. He doesn't. And it's only here, in which I've castled, I have two pieces developed, my center is actually quite strong at this point, that I kick his knight away with c4, and then I exchange his pawn. And this whole point, after this exchange, if we back up, all right, I've got potentially this pawn might be weak, this pawn might be weak. After the exchange, white really has no weaknesses in this position. Well, after my next move, at least, there's really nothing that black can attack. This pawn can always be defended by b3, so there's no problems here. The rest of white is perfectly sound, right? He's developed, he's going to finish development very soon. There's no weaknesses near his king. This pawn might potentially be weak. It could be. However, notice how by exchanging here, the way we did is that now the D file is blocked, and so his queen and his rooks can't easily attack this pawn. So the only thing he can attack it with would be his minor pieces, this knight and this bishop, and well, I can defend it, quite easily if I have to. Move my queen, move the rooks over, right? So this pawn isn't really weak, not really. So I have no weaknesses, and if I have no weaknesses, there's nothing for black to attack, and if black can't attack me, he probably won't win. It doesn't mean he's going to lose, right? It could still be a draw, but it's very hard for black to actually do anything in this position. And this is what I want. This is what I like. And why should I let black have any fun? I just create a solid position, I have a space advantage, and maybe I can push it forward. And as we'll see, that's what actually happens in the game. The first thing I do is I'm trying to be very careful about what my opponent's potential threats are. And we know that the D pawn could potentially be maybe weak, but this pawn might be weak because the knight's attacking it, the bishop's defending it, but the bishop's also protecting this knight. And after an exchange, if I do nothing, say, like I were to play king h1, after take, this pawn is hanging. Now, black can't do this right now because then I win the pawn, then I win the rook, and then things are quite bad, but that's a potential idea. And so I simply stop that. I play b3, I'm protected, he castles, and so now all I have to do is finish development. I'm not thinking about how do I attack, how do I win, what do I do. All I'm thinking is I need to finish my development. And I've got these pieces in particular. I decide to develop the bishop first. I put on the long diagonal, I'm defending my pawn. He plays bishop f6. I develop my knight. Easy. He plays a strange move. This is a knight. I'm not really sure what the idea was here. Because we'll see that this really discoordinates his pieces in a second. Now there's one last thing that I want to do, and that is I want to move my queen off the back rank. The idea is, what I do is I play queen d2. That's my move. And now my rooks can go anywhere. With my queen here, this rook can only go here, and this rook can go here, or can stay on the a file, right? But I'm not sure where I want to put my rooks yet. Maybe the e file will open up, maybe it won't. Maybe the c file, maybe it won't. I don't know. And so by moving my queen first, queen d2, I give my rooks options. I can put my rooks in any setup, and it'll depend. For instance, if on the next move, black were to play queen e7, say, maybe he wants to play e5, well now it makes perfect sense to put my rook here. Because now I'm discouraging that. Or, backing up, if you were to put his queen here, I could do the same thing on the opposite side. And I've got some pressure here. Maybe c5 becomes a threat. That c5. Or maybe d5. Something, something like this, where now maybe c5 is a threat here. Something along the lines of this. So I play queen d2. I'm keeping my options open. And it's only here, after black plays a6, that I really think for the first time. The opening I already knew, in a sense I knew of what black wanted. He wants to push my pawns, and so I don't do that. There's not really thinking there. That was, you could say, chess knowledge. And then develop my pieces, there wasn't a lot of thinking either. I'm just going to develop my pieces. That's it. I make sure there's no tactics, like with that knight takes c4. But that's really it. I'm maybe calculating one move advance. Maybe. But really, I'm just following principles. And we see that. I've castled, every piece is developed, it's time to put my rooks into play. But now here is where I start thinking, because now I have to think, what do I do? My pieces are developed, where do I go? Now, I have lots of possibilities. I could play, again, with center. I could think about pushing d5. I could think, maybe, about pushing the g-pawn here, move this knight, and then push the f-pawn. That's a possibility, get my pawns closer to this king. I don't really like that, but it's an idea. It's something to consider. If I could somehow get this bishop onto this diagonal, that could be very good, so there's an idea. But then I also look at what my opponent not just what is my opponent's idea. We know he probably wants to counter attack my pawns. But I also look at his pieces in particular, and I see that this knight, if it were attacked, has no good squares. That is, the only square would be c8, which is pretty terrible. And so what I do is I decide to gain some space. I play a4, and my threat is a5, and he has to move his knight. If black were to play a5, that'd be kind of silly, because if we back up, he had just played a6, and after a4 he plays a5, we just lost 2 moves, and now my knight can jump here, my bishop can jump here, and now, oh, suddenly I've got some nice weaknesses right here. My queen is also attacking this pawn if this rook ever decides to move, and out of nowhere, I've got a pretty big advantage on the queen side. I now know exactly where I want to play. Black doesn't play that. Instead, he plays d5, which I guess is a type of miscalculation. I think what black is hoping is something like this. Exchange, exchange, and now his knight has a good square. But why should I allow that to happen? After d5, I, of course, keep my idea. I play a5, push his knight back. Then it's actually interesting, because it turns out that now this pawn only has one defender, and it's attacked by the pawn and the knight, so I take it. My opponent plays b6. And this is really, this is the key position in many ways. What's happened here is that I have the option of taking this pawn. Then he retakes, maybe I take this pawn, and then he retakes. And we reach a position like this, where white's up a pawn, and in all honesty, white is probably winning. All the same, I didn't really like this position. And the problem is that it seemed to me that now black has potential ideas here. Notice how this pawn is being attacked. At any point, black can get rid of the defender, then potentially take that pawn. Or he could leave the pawn. It's isolated. He could maneuver one of his knights to the d5 square. For instance, he could move his queen, then go here to here, and now his knight is on a perfect square. It takes a bit of time, but that's that, right? I mean, black's position is kind of bad, but that's an idea. This square is also weak, so if he has a knight here, then it's also attacking this square, which could be weak. It is weak. And he also has the f-file. And so when I look at all this, I'm thinking, I don't like that. I don't like giving black these ideas. It's actually interesting. I was thinking about that so much, I didn't even ask, what are white's ideas? Because if I would have asked that, I would have said, oh, geez, I got this knight e5. That's powerful. I've got huge pressure against this pawn. I could just double, and then that pawn's almost going to certainly fall. Knight a4 could be very strong. The d5 advance right now, where I cash in, that could be extremely strong. For instance, d5, take. Now all of a sudden, a bishop c4, potentially pinning the queen. Rook e1, attacking the queen, and like, black could be in huge trouble here. But all the same, I completely rejected this, because this is something that I learned relatively recently, and that's that, hanging on to pawns is often not the best idea, and that it's usually better to have equal material or even be down material if you have the better position. And also what often happens, especially against, well, amateur players, so non-masters, is people try and hang on to material so much. I used a different thought process. Again, I'm not saying how do I win the pawn, I'm thinking how do I improve my pieces? And so what I decide to do is I play knight e5. And after the following series of moves, which is more, I don't want to say it's forced, but it's very logical. He exchanges his piece. That makes perfect sense. I recapture the queen. He takes my knight. I recapture. He takes my pawn. I recapture. He takes that pawn. This is the position I wanted. Now, did I calculate it? Not really. But just look at it. Just by looking at it, I saw how powerful it was. Because, well, the entire black army is on the back rank. This rook can barely move. This rook can't move. The queen can't move. The knight is the only semi-decent piece. Black is in trouble. Even ignoring what white can do. This bishop is on a perfect diagonal. This knight is a beast. It's better than all of black's pieces put together. It probably has more squares than most of them. This rook is facing a pawn. The queen can go anywhere. This rook can go... I can do anything. And this is what I wanted. And to me, this is worth so much more than a pawn. And it is. Again, the only reason this position came about is because black wanted to keep material. Right? If we back up, right now he's down a pawn. He plays b6. He's offering this pawn. Again, I don't give black what he wants. I move my knight. I'm threatening to potentially take this knight and then maybe win the pawn or win this pawn. I got lots of things that can happen. And so he exchanges everything. But by exchanging everything, he exchanged all his good pieces. He has nothing left. And then after rook fd1, my rook is eyeing up his queen. Well, he's busted. He's completely busted. As we'll see, after rook a7, I play queen g4, and everything with white is coordinating so beautifully. The queen is attacking this knight, so that way if this knight were to move, say to here, potentially, or maybe to f6, now the rook is attacking, holy cow, everything is coming up. But also notice how the queen is attacking this pawn, which the bishop is indirectly attacking as well. So if we can ever play e6, well, we got a checkmate right there. e6 also attacks the knight, which might be pinned on the rook. This rook is attacking this pawn, but could also go to here and slide over. And in short, white is dominating. In the end, it only lasted one more move. My opponent tried to play queen e8 to get his queen off of the pin, but after e6, he resigned. Because again, mate is threatened here on g7. If he plays f6 to stop it, I, of course, will take the knight. I'm up a piece. And you can even think about potentially playing knight f6 as a very powerful tactic. If you were to play knight f6, I would simply take it. The pawn is pinned. He actually loses his queen here. And then mate is going to follow. And I don't... something like g6 doesn't work either. Again, I can take the knight. It's even possible to... I think queen d4 might be even stronger because we're forking the rook. We're threatening mate on any one of these two squares. We could still just take the knight. And we can see how powerful the position is. We can see why I like this game. Because everything was a dream for white. I do want to point out a couple of things. Namely, some things that I didn't do. I did not talk a lot about calculation. I did not talk a lot about tactics. Not really. There's a bit here at the end, which I had to calculate. But most of these moves aren't calculation-based. It's not, I go here, he goes there, I go here. The way I play chess is, if I could talk, is predominantly idea-based. What is my opponent doing, and what can I do? Now, I don't play, or I tend to avoid these super sharp positions, you know, like the Sicilian or the Scotch Gambit, positions where you need to calculate. But this is how I approach, this is how I naturally do it. And we can see how effective it could be, is I didn't really do anything special this game at all. If you were to review, what did I do? I developed perfectly normally. And if you look at this position, I believe the computer says it's like 0.05. It's as equal as it gets. But I was able to slowly outplay my opponent. Reach, this position. Where, what did I do? All I did was develop my pieces, I protected one potential weakness, and then I'm going to decide what to do. And this is perhaps the only tough move, or the only move that I had to really think about, was a4. And this is because I noticed a weakness in my opponent's position. I'm not just thinking about me. In fact, I think about me in chess much less than I used to, certainly. And I try and think about my opponent. Because again, if I can stop my opponent from doing anything, then I'm doing great, almost by definition. It's kind of a mean way to put it, but if my opponent is not having fun, then I'm probably doing my job, especially as white. I advance a4, a5. I just gained space, and then, wow, I won a pawn. That was quite nice. And then I decide not to keep the pawn. I'm just going to improve my pieces. And in particular, I'm trading off his pieces. His good bishop. His other good bishop. Sure, he keeps material, but I've got the position. And that's just a dream for me. And that was a lesson, again, I've learned relatively late in my chess development. I wasn't always like this. But once I started thinking like this, my results really improved. Well, obviously, that's what's happened. And that's really it. Calculation, I move here, I go there, he goes there, I go... It is a very small part, at least of this game. And it's the ideas. Because if you know what your idea is, and you know what your opponent's idea is, then you can manipulate the battlefield. And that's what I do. That's how I think. That's how I approach it. I don't win all the time, but I lose a lot less than I used to, which is great. And, some people, they love winning. Other people hate losing. I guess I'm kind of both, but I'd rather not lose, right? Given the choice, doing something risky, and you might win, or you might lose, right? Or you play safe, where you might win, and you probably won't lose. I mean, that just seems like the safe bet to me every time. So that's that. So again, this game, it really shows, the historical value. The reason that I'm here today is mostly because of this game, because of how it flowed, because the ideas all worked, right? It also helped that I didn't blunder. That's something I didn't really talk about, but I'm thinking about safety all the time. If you're thinking about safety, you're not going to blunder. Obviously blunder, right? You're not going to do something like, aha, check, that's going to lead to checkmate. Oh, whoops, he takes the knight. Right? You're less likely to do that. Anyway, I'm rambling at this point, so we're going to cut it here, nice and short. Well, for me, at least, under half an hour, so that's good. So there we go again. I'm SmithyQ, SmithyQ.com. If you found this at all useful, let me know. I think that was great. Perhaps I went a little bit fast, but again, I already know this game. I've analyzed it and countless times, I suppose. And the ideas are what matter to me in this position, like that flow of ideas. So found that helpful, useful? Let me know. Leave a comment. Again, if you want me to analyze a game, let me know. Leave me a comment or message me somehow, and I'll do that. And as always, comments, criticisms, let me know. That'd be great. I'm here to help. So that's that. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.